Back now to our election coverage. The balance of power in Washington, D.C. may shift dramatically with the results we'll learn in just the hours to come.
You recognize this guy, Chris Cuomo. He's now on our national cable channel, News Nation. Welcome to Chicago.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it.
Lourdes, nice to see you.
So you're going to be steering up the election coverage tonight. What are the key races you're going to be watching, and are we going to get all our answers tonight?
Don't get all the answers tonight. And that's not unexpected. And I think it's really important that we don't give a sense that that is somehow dramatic. If races are close, they have different counting protocols. If they're really close, then you have runoff laws in states. So better to get it right than get it quickly. And, you know, the nice thing about covering an election is you really let the returns tell the story. So I'm going to watch the races that wind up being close, you know, as we go through. I don't really see the need to pick them in advance. Obviously, on the Senate side, you have a handful of races that are close out of the 3 dozen or so. So what I feel comfortable about tonight is our decision desk is really top-notch. It's different than just like a group of people sitting around. When you think decision desk, you just think it's a bunch of guys like me. It isn't. These are sophisticated people who have their own technology that will give us returns as fast as we can get them. Starts at 5 Central, obviously, our coverage. So I'm feeling good about our source of information.
Yeah, a lot to cover. I want to turn now and talk about former President Trump, who has said that he plans to make an announcement come next week. How do you see what happens tonight sort of shaping any sort of announcement that he may make?
If it goes the way that it is expected by history and by predictions of what we see in terms of enthusiasm in different races, he'll claim a win because the former president is very good at doing that, and he will have the opportunity. There was some nonsense going around that he was thinking of announcing last night. That was the kind of hype that we need to avoid in the media. That was just to get people to watch, right? He was never going to do that. It would have been bad for him. And it would have shown himself to not be gaining advantage in the moment. If they do well, he does well. If they don't do well, there's this suggestion that that's bad for the former president. I don't think so. If anything, it makes him the answer once again. I think it's the other side that has real problems of outcome here. There's a very good chance if the Democrats sweat a lot of seats and lose control of both houses, the need to blame in this toxic two-party system winds up being very bad for the sitting president, which is why the White House was putting out a lot of poll information today about how popular the president's agenda is, you know, leave pay and things like that. But he didn't get them done. And they haven't told their story well of what they did get done. So I'd look at that side of the ball for negative impact. And I think for the former president, it's all upside.
And the former president spoke with a News Nation correspondent, Marky Martin, and he said exactly what you're saying, which is, well, if Republicans do well tonight, I'll take credit, and if they don't, it's not on me.
That's why I said it, Ben.
Yeah.
No, you know, I mean, look, he's very savvy about how to play it. We were very lucky to get that interview. Marky did a good job with it in pushing the former president about it. It was really interesting to see who he did want to talk about, which is, of course, Governor DeSantis.
Yes.
And he used a very nice piece of Trumpian code that I think people should pick up, which is that DeSantis is ungrateful. Now, that is it's not just a slight. It is his way of telling the base, I made this guy. I made DeSantis. He is a mini-me. That's all he is. That's why he gave him the pejorative nickname. To me, that is the strongest indication that the former president is really thinking about getting back in the ring, that he's taking time to go after somebody who may be the strongest nominee in his absence.
But in some ways, doesn't he have to get back in the ring? Because he's facing so many investigations and so much potential trouble? Or does all that, or a lot of that, I should say, go away if Republicans take control?
I think that the speculation that the former president having legal issues will somehow handcuff him, no pun intended, is misplaced. There's absolutely no indication that his base, which has become the predominant focus of his party, will see anything but sympathy for him if he is involved in any type of legal action. And frankly, I'm not impressed by the cases either. Just to be very clear, you can have legitimate questions. Russian interference presented legitimate questions. The Mueller probe presented legitimate questions. The answers were very unsatisfying. And I thought that that was always going to happen when I was covering that investigation, that they'd never get the former president with any kind of criminality. I think that also with what's happening in New York State and also in Georgia. I don't expect an indictment. If there is an indictment, I'm not expecting anything more than that. I think it helps him It will not stop him. He doesn't need to run to make it stop.
All right, Chris Cuomo, thank you for your insight. You'll be working hard tonight.
All night long, but
All
it's
right.
worth it.
All right,
Happy
thank
to
you.
have you
Nice
with
to
us
see
in
you.
Chicago.
And you can watch Chris Cuomo weeknights at 7 p.m. on News Nation. You can find it on the cable and satellite channels right there on your screen. You can also head to the website newsnationnow.com to find the channel in your area.